The Young and the Restless. Spoilers, full episodes, Fridays, the 19th of March, 2026. The air in the Genoa City penthouse was thick, heavy, with the unspoken terrors that always seemed to orbit the chaotic life of Adam Newman. Chelsea Lawson stood motionless by the grand mahogany doorway, her arms crossed so tightly over her silk emerald blouse that her knuckles were white. Her eyes, usually so vibrant, perceptive, and full of an unyielding fire, were currently clouded with a deep, paralyzing anxiety. She watched in agonizing silence as Adam aggressively threw the last of his tailored dark dress shirts into a distressed leather duffel bag. The metallic rasp of the zipper sounded like a death knell in the quiet room. "You do not have to do this." Adam, Chelsea pleaded, her voice a low, desperate whisper that barely managed to cut through the oppressive silence of their bedroom. "You and Nick flying out there, going after Matt Clark together. It is a suicide mission. Matt is a ghost. Adam, he is a dangerous, vindictive ghost who has haunted the Newman family for decades. Let the authorities handle it. Let Ray's contacts in the police force do their jobs." Adam paused, his hands gripping the brass edges of the bag. He slowly lifted his head, his piercing dark gaze meeting hers. The shadows of the room seemed to cling to the sharp contours of his face, emphasizing the dangerous edge that Chelsea both loved and feared. "The authorities cannot touch Matt Clark, Chelsea. You know that as well as I do. He has slipped through their bureaucratic fingers too many times. He is threatening the family. He is threatening the company, my father, and most importantly, he is threatening us. I will not sit around in Genoa City and wait for a madman to strike the people I love." Chelsea took a hesitant step forward, her voice trembling with an emotion she could barely contain. "It is not just Matt that I am terrified of, Adam. It is Las Vegas. It is what that city does to you. Every time you go back there, pieces of your past, the dark, twisted pieces of the man who called himself Spider, start to claw their way back to the surface. I am terrified of what you might have to become to stop Matt." Adam closed the distance between them, enveloping her in a tight, fierce embrace. He pressed a gentle kiss to the crown of her head, breathing in the sweet, familiar scent of her perfume. "I am not that man anymore, Chelsea. I am Adam Newman. I am your partner. I am a father. I am only going to Vegas to set a trap, spring it, and come back to you. I promise." Despite his reassuring words, a cold shiver ran down Chelsea's spine as she watched him walk out the door. She knew Adam believed what he was saying, but she also knew that the darkness inside him was never truly gone. It merely slept, waiting for the right moment to awaken. Hours later, the neon glare of the Las Vegas Strip bled through the tinted windows of the private Newman Enterprises town car. The city of sin, artificial lights, and buried secrets stretched out before Adam and Nick Newman like a glittering, treacherous ocean. The tension in the back seat was palpable, a living, breathing entity that sat squarely between the two brothers. Nick adjusted the cuffs of his bespoke navy suit, his jaw set in a rigid line of pure, unadulterated Newman determination. He did not trust Adam. He never fully had, and perhaps he never would. But when it came to protecting the family legacy and neutralizing a threat as volatile as Matt Clark, they were forced into an uneasy, fragile alliance. They stepped out of the car and walked onto the sprawling, vibrant floor of the Bellagio. The air was a chaotic sensory overload symphony of ringing slot machines, the clinking of highball glasses, and the low, desperate murmurs of high rollers gambling away their futures. The contact said Matt frequents the high-stakes baccarat tables in the VIP lounge. Nick muttered his eyes, scanning the crowded room with the precision of a hawk. "We stick to the plan, Adam. We bait him with the dummy offshore accounts, get him to admit on the wire that he's been funneling the stolen Newman capital, and the FBI moves in. Clean, simple, and by the book. No cowboy antics." "I know the plan, Nick," Adam replied, his voice a low, irritated growl. "Just focus on your end. I'll make sure he takes the bait." They took their positions at the edge of the velvet-roped VIP section. Adam ordered a scotch, neat leaning casually against the mahogany bar, projecting the image of a relaxed, wealthy playboy, but beneath the surface his muscles were coiled tight, ready to spring. Then it happened. Adam was staring at the reflection of the casino floor in the mirrored pillar across from him when a bizarre, inexplicable physical sensation washed over him. It was not the familiar rush of adrenaline, nor was it the creeping dread of anxiety. It was a sharp electric tingling at the absolute base of his skull. The sensation radiated downward, vibrating through his spine, setting every nerve ending in his body on fire. He squeezed his eyes shut, gripping the edge of the bar so hard his knuckles popped. Suddenly, the sounds of the casino, the jazz piano, the laughter, the clinking chips faded into a muffled hum. In their place came the roaring sound of rushing wind. Vivid, fragmented, and utterly impossible memories violently invaded his consciousness. He saw canyons of glass and steel, towering skyscrapers that belonged to New York City, not Genoa City or Las Vegas. He felt the sickening, exhilarating drop of free fall, followed by the violent, shoulder-wrenching jerk of a thin, impossibly strong tensile line catching his weight. He looked down at his own hands in his mind's eye and saw them covered in a skin-tight, vibrant red and blue fabric adorned with a black webbing pattern. He felt the agonizing, soul-crushing grief of a blonde woman falling through the air, a woman he instinctively knew as Gwen, though he had never met a Gwen in his entire life. He remembered the burden of a mantra echoing in his ears times. With great power, there must also come great responsibility. Asterisk. Asterisk. What the hell is happening to me times? Adam thought, his breath coming in short, ragged gasps. Asterisk. Whose memories are these? This isn't my life. This isn't Spider from Vegas. This is an actual spider. Asterisk. Adam heads up. Nick's sharp hiss cut through the psychic static, pulling Adam violently back to reality. Matt Clark had arrived. The sleazy, dangerous operative was moving toward their designated table, flanked by two hulking bodyguards. But Matt was paranoid, his eyes darting around the room. As he approached the bait, a briefcase containing the rigged financial documents, he suddenly stopped. His eyes locked onto Nick, who had shifted too quickly and then darted to Adam. Matt's survival instincts kicked in. He realized the trap was sprung. Newman Matt spat his hand, darting beneath his tailored jacket. You think I'm stupid. The carefully constructed plan evaporated in an instant. Nick lunged forward to intercept, shouting for casino security, but he was too far away. Matt pulled a concealed, serrated combat knife, his eyes wild with desperate rage. He didn't go for Nick. He lunged directly at Adam, who was still standing by the bar, seemingly disoriented. Matt thrust the blade upward in a lethal, sweeping arc, aimed directly at Adam's abdomen. The electric tingling at the base of Adam's skull erupted into a deafening siren. Time seemed to slow to an agonizing crawl. Adam didn't calculate the trajectory of the blade or plan a countermaneuver. His body simply reacted, driven by an ancient, deeply ingrained muscle memory from a past life he couldn't comprehend. In a display of superhuman agility that defied the laws of physics and human anatomy, Adam's body moved. He didn't just step back, he launched himself backward. With a fluid, breathtakingly flawless standing backflip, Adam vaulted entirely over the lunging Matt Clark. He spun in midair, the neon lights reflecting off his dress shoes, and landed with pinpoint precision on the edge of a nearby craps table. But he didn't land like a man. He landed in a bizarre, deeply crouched position, balanced perfectly on the balls of his feet, his fingers splayed wide against the green, felt in a distinctly arachnid-like posture. The entire casino floor seemed to freeze. The collective gasp of the patrons sucked the air out of the room. Matt Clark stumbled forward, his momentum carrying him into the empty space where Adam had been a fraction of a second before, off balance and utterly bewildered by the impossible acrobatic feat he had just witnessed. Matt crashed hard into a cocktail waitress, sending a tray of crystal glasses shattering to the floor. The momentary distraction was all Nick needed. Shaking off his own profound shock, Nick tackled Matt to the carpeted floor, driving his knee into the man's back and twisting his arm until the knife clattered uselessly away. Within seconds, the Bellagio security team, followed closely by the undercover FBI agents, swarmed the area, hauling a cursing and thrashing Matt Clark to his feet and dragging him toward the service elevators. The trap had worked, Matt was caught, but the execution was a catastrophic, highly public mess. The initial plan of a quiet, recorded confession was entirely ruined. Nick stood up, straightening his jacket, his chest heaving as he stared at his brother. Adam slowly stood up from his bizarre crouch on the craps table, looking down at his own hands with an expression of pure, unadulterated horror. He flexed his fingers, half expecting a strand of webbing to shoot from his wrists. The memories of the red and blue suit were fading, but the phantom sensation of the mask against his skin lingered. An hour later, the oppressive silence of the Newman brothers' penthouse suite at the Grand Phoenix was broken only by the clinking of ice against crystal. Nick stood by the floor-to-ceiling window overlooking the glittering Las Vegas Strip, a glass of expensive bourbon in his hand. He took a long, burning sip before turning to face his brother. Adam was sitting on the edge of the leather sofa, his head buried in his hands, staring blankly at the intricate patterns of the Persian rug. "What the hell was that down there, Adam?" Nick demanded, his voice dangerously low and thick with suspicion. Adam didn't look up. "We got him, Nick. Matt is in federal custody. He's going away for a long time. The family is safe. That's all that matters." "Don't deflect," Nick snapped, closing the distance between them. He slammed his glass down on the glass coffee table, the sharp times, crack times making Adam flinch. "I asked you a question. You did a blind standing backflip over a man charging you with a knife, and you landed on a table like an Olympic gymnast." "No, not a gymnast. You landed like some kind of freakish animal. You have never moved like that in your entire life. I've fought you, Adam. I know what you're capable of physically. That was not you." Adam slowly raised his head. His mind was still racing, trying to categorize the impossible influx of memories from a multiverse, a past life as a superhero that made absolutely no logical sense in the reality of Genoa City. He couldn't tell Nick the truth. Nick would think he had suffered a complete psychotic break. It was instinct, Nick. Adam lied, his voice remarkably steady despite the storm raging inside him. Pure, unadulterated adrenaline. When a man comes at you with a knife, the body does crazy things to survive. The fight or flight response kicked in, and I moved. That's all it was. Nick's eyes narrowed into tiny, skeptical slits. He leaned in closer, searching Adam's face for any sign of deception. Instinct adrenaline doesn't teach you how to defy gravity, Adam. It doesn't teach you martial arts, acrobatics. I am asking you right now, man to man, brother to brother. Is this about your time out here? Is the spider persona back? Or is it something darker? Are you using again? Are you involved in some underground fighting ring? What is going on in your head? "There is nothing going on in my head," Adam shouted, suddenly standing up, his own anger flaring to mask his profound confusion. "My dark past is not coming back to haunt me, Nick. I am not Spider anymore. I am just a man who wants to protect his family. Matt Clark is gone because of what we did tonight. You're welcome." Adam grabbed his jacket and stormed toward the door of the suite, desperate to escape Nick's probing, accusatory glare. "I'm keeping my eye on you, Adam," Nick called out after him, his voice echoing in the luxurious room. "I don't know what you're hiding, but I know you're lying to me. And if whatever's going on with you threatens this family, I will take you down myself." Adam didn't reply. He walked out the heavy wooden door, clicking shut behind him. He leaned against the hallway wall, closing his eyes as another phantom wave of wind rushing past his face washed over him. Asterix. "With great power," Asterix. The voice echoed in his mind again. He shoved his hands deep into his pockets and walked away. 2 days later, the private Newman jet touched down in the familiar overcast chill of Genoa City. Adam walked into the penthouse, the heavy duffel bag slung over his shoulder. The moment the door clicked shut, Chelsea was there. She threw her arms around his neck, burying her face in his chest, breathing a massive sigh of relief. "You're home," she whispered, her voice trembling. "I saw the news alerts. Matt Clark was indicted on federal racketeering and attempted murder charges. You did it, Adam. You're safe." I told you I'd come back to you, Adam said softly, wrapping his arms around her waist. But as he held her, he felt a strange stiffness in his own posture. The comforting embrace of the woman he loved felt slightly alien, as if he were experiencing it through the filter of another man's soul. Chelsea pulled back, her hands resting on his chest. She looked up into his eyes, a bright, welcoming smile on her face. But as her gaze locked onto his, the smile slowly faded. The deep perceptive intuition that had always connected her to Adam flared to life, warning her that something was terribly wrong. Adam, she asked, her brow furrowing. Are you okay? You look different. I'm fine, Chelsea. Just jet-lagged. It was a stressful trip. He turned away from her, walking toward the kitchen island to drop his keys. As he tossed the heavy ring of brass keys toward the marble counter, they hit the edge and bounced off, plummeting toward the hardwood floor. Adam didn't even look. He didn't turn his head. His right hand simply shot out backward, his fingers snapping shut to catch the keys in midair, mere inches from the floor with a terrifying mechanical precision. Chelsea gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. She stared at his hand, still hovering above the floor, clutching the keys. Adam slowly stood up straight, realizing what he had just done. He turned to face her, trying to force a reassuring smile, but it didn't reach his eyes. His eyes were distant, haunted by skylines he had never seen and tragedies he had never lived. Just good reflexes, Adam mumbled, placing the keys gently on the counter. Chelsea didn't say a word. She wrapped her arms around herself, the same protective gestures she had made before he left for Vegas. The man standing in front of her looked like Adam Newman, sounded like Adam Newman, but the energy radiating from him was entirely foreign. She could see it in the twitch of his muscles, the hyper-awareness in his gaze, the way he seemed to be listening to a frequency she couldn't hear. As Adam walked past her toward the bedroom, Chelsea felt a cold, sinking dread settle in the pit of her stomach. She had worried about the dark past of Las Vegas coming back to claim him. But as she watched him move with that strange, silent, predatory grace, she realized with horrifying certainty that Adam was hiding something far more ominous and inexplicable than she could have ever imagined. The nightmare wasn't over. It was just evolving into something entirely new. The clinking of crystal glasses and the low melodic hum of a jazz piano filled the dining room at Society, but Billy Abbott heard none of it. His eyes were glued to the glowing screen of his tablet, his fingers flying across the glass as he drafted his fourth email in the span of 3 minutes. He hadn't touched his scotch. He hadn't even blinked. You're going to burn a hole through that screen, Billy, a voice purred, cutting through his intense concentration. Billy looked up, his jaw tight, to see Sally Spectra sliding into the leather booth opposite him. Her fiery red hair cascaded over her emerald green silk blouse, and her sharp, observant eyes locked onto his exhausted face. Sally, not now. I'm in the middle of a hostile restructure at Chancellor Winter's. Devin is breathing down my neck, and Lily is second-guessing every move I make, Billy muttered, his voice raspy with fatigue. He immediately looked back down at his tablet. Sally reached across the table, her manicured fingers gently but firmly closing the leather folio over his screen. Hey, look at me, Billy sighed, running a hand through his hair. What, Sally? I don't have time for a lecture. You don't have time for anything except that company, Sally said, her tone softening but remaining resolute. I've been watching you for weeks, Billy. You're a ghost. You're haunting the corridors of Chancellor Winters, fighting battles that won't matter on your deathbed. When was the last time you spoke to your family, truly spoke to them? Jack and I are fine. We talk. Billy deflected, shifting uncomfortably under her piercing gaze. I'm not talking about Jack, Sally pressed, leaning in closer. I'm talking about your mother. When was the last time you called Jill? And I don't mean a 5-minute check-in where you complain about the board of directors. I mean asking her how she is. Billy scoffed, reaching for his scotch. Jill is Jill. She's indestructible. She's probably off in the UK terrorizing some poor executive or enjoying a spa day. She doesn't need me hovering. Everyone needs their family. Billy, Sally said, her voice dropping to a whisper laced with her own past regrets. You think the corner office is going to keep you warm at night. You think winning a boardroom brawl is going to hold your hand when things get dark. You are pushing away the people who actually care about you for a legacy that is already secure. Reconcile with her. Call her. Stop pretending that this corporate war is more important than your own mother. Billy stared at the amber liquid in his glass. Deep down, a gnawing sensation twisted in his gut. He knew Sally was right. He had been avoiding Jill, using the friction at Chancellor Winter's as a convenient excuse to dodge the complicated, heavy emotions that always accompanied his relationship with his mother. I'll call her tomorrow, Billy mumbled, finally taking a sip. Call her tonight, Sally insisted, sliding out of the booth. Before tomorrow decides to change the rules on you. Tomorrow didn't just change the rules. It flipped the entire board. The next morning, the atmosphere inside the Chancellor Winter's executive suite was electric, but not with the usual corporate buzz. Billy was standing by the floor-to-ceiling windows, looking out over the Genoa City skyline, mentally preparing for a brutal meeting with Devin Hamilton. His phone buzzed on the mahogany desk. He glanced at the caller ID. It was a London number. Billy Abbott, he answered, his tone brisk. Mr. Abbott, this is Dr. Aris from the London Cardiac Institute, a heavily accented voice said. The sterile clinical tone sent an immediate icy spike of adrenaline straight into Billy's heart. I am calling regarding your mother, Jill Abbott. She has suffered a severe cardiac event, a massive failure. She is currently on life support. The phone slipped from Billy's grasp, clattering against the polished desk before tumbling to the carpeted floor. The world around him dissolved into a sickening blur. The walls of the office seemed to close in the air, suddenly too thin to breathe. Within an hour, the shocking news had breached the walls of the hospital and flooded Genoa City. The Newman Media news alerts chimed on every smartphone in town, times Jill Abbott in critical condition following sudden collapse, asterisk. The matriarch, the fierce, unstoppable force of nature, was suddenly fighting for her life, and the entire city felt the tremor. The flight to London was a waking nightmare. By the time Billy arranged for Jill to be medevaced back to Genoa City Memorial Hospital to be under the care of top specialists, he was a hollow shell of the man who had sat at society just 24 hours prior. Standing outside the intensive care unit, Billy stared through the glass partition. The rhythmic, mechanical hiss of the ventilator was the only sound tethering him to reality. Jill lay there, her skin pale and translucent, a stark contrast to the vibrant, fiery woman who had commanded every room she ever entered. Tubes and wires snaked across her frail body, monitoring a heart that had finally given out. Billy pressed his forehead against the cold glass, tears burning his eyes. Asterisk, call her tonight times. Sally's voice echoed mockingly in his head. Asterisk, before tomorrow decides to change the rules. Asterisk. I'm so sorry, Mom, Billy choked out, his voice breaking. I'm so damn sorry. The guilt was a physical weight crushing his chest. He had spent months, years, even prioritizing his ego, his need to prove himself at Chancellor Winter's, over the woman who had fought tooth and nail to give him the world. He remembered their last phone call, how he had rushed her off the line because he was late for a strategy meeting with Lily. He remembered the annoyance in his own voice when she had tried to offer him advice. He would burn the entire company to the ground just to hear her criticize him one more time. But the world did not stop spinning, and Chancellor Winter's did not pause for grief. 3 days later, Billy was running on fumes, a toxic mix of black coffee and sheer adrenaline. He had set up a makeshift office in the hospital waiting room, his laptop balanced on his knees as he reviewed quarterly projections. The elevator doors chimed, and Devin Hamilton stepped out, followed closely by Lily Winters. Their faces were masks of sympathy, but their eyes held the unmistakable steel of corporate urgency. Billy, Lily said, softly placing a hand on his shoulder. How is she today? No change, Billy said, rubbing his bloodshot eyes. The doctors are adjusting her meds, but her heart is incredibly weak. We're just waiting. Devin shifted his weight, exchanging a loaded glance with Lily. Billy, we are all praying for Jill. You know that. She's family. But we have a crisis on our hands. The Omega merger is falling apart. They're spooked by the news of Jill's health and they want assurances that Chancellor Winters is stable. We need you at the board meeting this afternoon. We need a united front. Billy stared at them, disbelief washing over him. My mother is dying 50 feet from here, Devin. You want me to put on a suit and tap dance for a bunch of shareholders? We need the co-CEO to do his job, Devin replied, his tone hardening just a fraction. Jill built this company. Do you think she would want you to let it fall apart while you sit in a waiting room? Before Billy could erupt, Jack Abbott strode down the hallway. The patriarch of the Abbott family looked equally exhausted, his silver hair slightly disheveled. Devin, Lily, give us a minute, Jack ordered, his voice brooking no argument. Once they were alone, Jack turned to his younger brother. Billy, they are right. The board is panicking. The Abbott family name is tied to this. You cannot abandon your post. You have to balance this. You have to be strong enough to do both. I can't, Jack Billy exploded in a harsh whisper pointing toward the ICU. I failed her. I spent my whole life trying to prove I wasn't a screw-up, and the one time she needed me to just be her son, I was too busy looking at spreadsheets. I am not leaving this hospital. You are the head of her legacy, Jack countered, gripping Billy's arms. If Chancellor Winters goes under, her life's work is destroyed. Prioritize, Billy. Find a way. But the pressure was a ticking time bomb, and it didn't take long for it to detonate. Distracted, sleep-deprived, and consumed by his agonizing vigil at Jill's bedside, Billy made a catastrophic error. A confidential dossier regarding Chancellor Winters' financial vulnerabilities, a file Billy was supposed to secure and present to the Omega executives, was inadvertently left on a secure server without the proper encryption protocols. Within 48 hours, the file was hacked and leaked to the Genoa City Chronicle. The headline was "A Death Blow times Chancellor Winters on the Brink Secret Financial Woes Revealed as Founder Fights for Life, asterisk." The fallout was instantaneous and brutal. Stock prices plummeted. The Omega executives pulled out of the merger entirely, citing gross negligence and unstable leadership. The scandal threatened to unravel the entire Chancellor Winters empire, casting a dark, humiliating shadow over the legacy Jill and Catherine Chancellor had built. Billy stood in the center of his office, the newspaper crumpled in his fist. His phone was ringing incessantly. Texts from Jack, voicemails from Ashley, emails from furious board members demanding his immediate resignation. He had tried to balance the two worlds, and in doing so, he had utterly destroyed one. The climax arrived on a rainy Thursday afternoon. The board of directors had called an emergency meeting. The agenda was singular, the immediate removal of Billy Abbott as co-CEO. Devin and Lily had made it clear that while they loved him, they had to protect the company. Billy was expected to attend, to defend himself, to salvage whatever was left of his career and his dignity. He was straightening his tie in the mirror of his office, his face a mask of grim determination, when his cell phone rang. It was the hospital. Mr. Abbott, the nurse's voice was tight with urgency. You need to come now. Jill's vitals are dropping rapidly. She's going into cardiac arrest. The doctors are doing everything they can, but the words hung in the air, a terrifying precipice. Billy looked at the door to the boardroom. Beyond it lay his career, his pride, the validation he had chased his entire adult life. He could walk in there, fight for his position, and maybe, just maybe, save his professional life. He looked at the phone in his hand. Asterisk, you think the corner office is going to keep you warm at night times, Sally's voice echoed in the silence of his office. Billy ripped the tie from his neck, throwing it onto the desk. He didn't say a word to his assistant. He didn't look back at the boardroom doors. He sprinted to the private elevator, hammering the button for the parking garage. He chose Jill. He chose family. The career be damned. Billy's absence at the board meeting was the final nail in his coffin. In a unanimous vote, the board stripped Billy Abbott of his title and his power. Devin Hamilton and Lily Winters were granted full executive control of Chancellor Winters. The news hit the press before Billy even reached the hospital parking lot. When Billy finally returned to the Abbott mansion days later, the atmosphere was toxic. Jack was waiting for him in the living room, a glass of bourbon in his hand and a look of profound disappointment on his face. You didn't even show up. Jack said, his voice dangerously low. You let them take the company. You let them drag the Abbott name through the mud, and you didn't even